welcome back to Finding Fashion. Today I'm really excited to welcome Viviane Paxinos, who is the General Manager and all-round student shopping expert at Unidays. Thanks so much for joining me. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here on Monday morning.
Yeah, there you go. Kick it off at the start. So can you tell me a little bit more about what being a General Manager for Unidays means?
Sure. So overall, my role is to drive growth for the company. So I work with various stakeholders, everything from our commercial team, our data and insights team, our product and engineering team, our marketing team, to look at how can I drive growth for the company. So growth means growth with members. How do we drive more members, their frequency of use? How do we make sure we retain our members and providing a seamless customer journey, but also growth with our partners. We work with over 600 brands globally, so lots of brands. And so my role is to work really closely with our partnerships team to make sure that we're developing really strategic partnerships and just making sure that the overall proposition works for the students.
Mm-hmm. And I think Gen Z, they are like the sweet spot of, a consumer group that brands really want to reach right now, but they're also quite notoriously hard to reach because, they don't watch as much live TV, they're always on their phones, they've got a lot of information coming to them. What do you think makes students so powerful as consumers?
Yeah, I think, I think it's despite their young age, they just have a huge amount of influence. They'll be 40% of, consumer spending power. When you look at their spending power globally, it's 200 billion. Wow. And that's their direct spending power. When you look at their indirect spending power and how they influence those around them, how they influence their parents, that gives them an indirect spending value of 3 trillion, which is massive. And we've never seen that before. So I think because of that, I think they've got so much power, but also it's also the way they interact with technology and media and advertising that makes them such a challenging, but also such an interesting and fascinating group to work with. I started working with a younger audience when I was at MTV. And so I love working, and I'm always so fascinated and curious about like the younger generation.
Okay, so part of what Unidays does is ultimately to team up with brands and provide discounts to students. How do you kind of use those insights and your knowledge of that demographic to build up an understanding of brands and retailers where they're most likely to shop?
Yeah. So firstly, we've got a wealth of first-party data that allows us to understand their behavior. So we regularly look at share of wallet, we'll look at the average order, we'll look at their frequency of engagement. We often look at which verticals they're engaging with and also the relationship between the verticals. So for example, we know that if a student engages with food, they also have a very high tendency to engage with fashion. And so we take that data and then that informs our comms and our messaging to students. So making sure that we're constantly leveraging those insights to drive the business objectives that we've got. And then on top of that, we overlay that with we've got the student council, which we reach 20,000 students, and we constantly speaking to them, understanding what's important to them, what are they worried about? What do they want to buy next? What are the brands they really love? And so we take all of that data, we take the behavioral data, and that gives us a really good picture of what students, what's coming next, what's important to them. And we apply that through everything we do, through all our marketing communications, through how we speak to our partners, we try and educate them, we try and inform them to make sure that they're getting the results they're looking for on the platform.
Mm-hmm. And so once you've got all that information from the students and you're feeding that back to the brands and your partners that you're working with, what's the process like? And how do you kind of build relationships with those brands to, affiliate them with the Unidays platform?
Yeah, it's one of the best part of the jobs. My team does so much of it, and they're so good. I try as often as possible to spend time with brands, but we take that information and we've got very close and strategic relationships with the partners. We meet with them regularly. We've got weekly catch-ups. we've got, quarterly like QBRs with them. And it all starts with really understanding what the brand wants to achieve. What are their challenges? What are the problems they're trying to solve? They're after new customers, and then that means our communication would be different to who we're targeting. We take a very targeted and approach to our comms. So if they're targeting new customers, we'll make sure that we will engage with students who have never engaged with that brand. If they want to drive frequency of purchase, then we'll look at which brands are high engagers. So we work through that with the partners. I'll invite all the different stakeholders that can help influence. And it's just really about understanding what the partner wants and making sure we're coming up with solutions to help drive sales, everything from discovery through to conversion. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's a new partner and or they have a new product launch, so they want us to drive discovery of that product. And then other partners, which we've seen a lot more over the last year, particularly around fashion, it was very transactional, drive sales, because everyone was panicking around COVID and they wanted to drive a lot of sales. So then we'll put performance marketing campaigns together. So we do everything through discovery and conversion, and through just making sure that we're closely connected to our partners. And at a time like COVID, we brought them closer to us. We gave them more comms than ever, more meetings, more catch-ups, so they knew exactly what was happening on the platform.
Mm-hmm. Those brands, I mean, they're just so desperate to track and get the attention of Gen Zers. How have you kind of seen the behaviors of that consumer group change? Because it flexes all the time with, trends, different behaviors, like tastes. How do you see it flex?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say, like, over the last few years, despite it being such a challenging time, we've actually seen that this audience is really resilient. And there's a couple of areas. So like in a few categories like fashion, we saw a 37% increase in fashion engagements over the last 2 years. In tech, I think it was about 25% increase over the last few years. So again, they're putting, and also one of the things we've noticed more and more is students are starting to save a bit more. Oh, wow. So we did a survey not too long ago. And about 50% of students said saving has become more important. I think that's why then the value and what we do at Unidays also then plays a role, right, in terms of providing savings. But there's two areas that I feel that are changing and constantly changing. The first one is loyalty. So loyalty, I feel sometimes there's a perception that this audience isn't loyal, right? And they'll leave a brand. But actually, from what I've seen and when we survey our students, they're really loyal. And that's why I think it's so important for brands to connect with them from early on, because you're building that affinity. And if you build that affinity, they will go on to use the brand when they graduate. We launched a grads proposition called Grad Life, which is for graduate students. We launched it last year, and we saw that 60% of students who engaged with a brand when they were on Unidays also engaged with them on grads. Mm-hmm. So loyalty and that affinity is really important. And I think something else, which we'll probably, I'm sure, go on to talk about, is sustainability. And so that's kind of something that we've seen flex and become more important for students, and the values, are also really important for them.
Mm-hmm. I think the landscape has changed so much with fashion. They care about fashion so much, but, you even look at kind of a lot of the high street stores that were traditionally popular with that kind of consumer demographic, and they've really, they've closed down, like they've really changed. Do you think that there is still appetite with this consumer group of Gen Zers to shop in store, or do you think that they've kind of shifted permanently to digital?
I think their behaviors online are really well established, right? And I think high street shops will need to work really hard to create that experience. Mm-hmm. And it's an experience that's also important. One of the surveys we did, it was the same survey, a fashion survey, which obviously I can send through to you to share with your audience. 60% of students said they want to try things on before they buy them. So there is a role for the high street shops. It's just about how do you create that experience to make sure that it's a really seamless experience between online and then the physical presence.
When it comes to online shopping, it has really superseded in-store shopping, and so much more popular, and a lot of people do it for convenience as well. how can like retailers adapt and engage their audiences and their shoppers with both kind of virtual and in-store shopping experiences to make sure that it is really seamless?
Yeah. First, I'd say that online shopping for for Gen Z, is like a way of life, right? And that should become your shop window, right? That's a way to introduce your brand. And then you need to think about, well, once you've introduced them to online, how do you then drive to in-store? It could be anything from like unique experiences that you can get. There's one of the surveys we did, 85% of the students were saying that it's really important for them to also have these in-store experiences and want to have these in-store experiences. So I think brands, will have to think about how they do that. It could be a pop-up, something unique, something that adds value, that gets students there. I wish I had the answer to what that could look like, but we talk to brands about extending their student discount in store. It could be something as simple as that, right? So the majority of the partners just have it for online, but we see like food partners, restaurant partners that have it in store and does really well for them. And now we're starting to see more of our beauty brands extend the discount from online to in-store, and that just something like as simple as that creates a seamless experience, right? So thinking about what are you doing online, and then how do you naturally extend that into in-store.
So you mentioned earlier just a little bit about kind of gaining that loyalty and the fact that Gen Z, they are so loyal despite popular belief. And it is so important. It's completely pivotal for brands to kind of get to know their consumer and really learn about what makes them tick in order to engage with them. What strategies prove most popular when it comes to kind of gaining but also maintaining consumer attention?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for brands these days because this audience is just, they're connected on so many platforms and devices, and they have such huge buying power. I think like advertisers need to be really nimble, and I think it's really hard to kind of keep up. And I think this audience is different from millennials, and in terms of how they engage with social and digital. Like for them, it's all about, like a millennial like me, I use social to stay connected with friends and family, right? Where they use it for entertainment. So I think some of the strategies we see, and we've seen that with the rise of TikTok, is making sure that you're using social media in a way that works to build that relationship with the audiences. So creating content, working with influencers, I'd say that it just has to feel like really authentic, because they do spot it if it feels fake. So thinking about, what is it about your brand that really, that this audience can resonate with, right? And how do you bring that to life across not just social, but gaming? Gaming is massive. How do you connect with that audience wherever they are? And I think it's really important to constantly be present.
So when it comes to kind of sustainability, which you touched on earlier, it has become like such a huge thing that students, Gen Z, really, really care about. And actually, that's where they want to spend their money. And you only see like the rise of Depop, for example, who, so many students, like even myself, like I'm not a student, but have grown in popularity. How do kind of brands track those trends in how their consumers are behaving, and how, like, in order to pivot basically and work out what they care about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about in relation to what we do. So I referred to the council earlier. So we use the council to make sure we're tracking those trends and understanding what's important to the students. And then we think about, okay, like how do we have a voice that's authentic in this space, right? I think that's still work that we need to be doing. So, we started a little bit with Earth Day earlier this year, and we think about like how do we continue that strategy. I think for brands, for example, we just recently did a content piece with H&M around their sustainability range, and that had great results. And we had our in-house studio team create that content, again using storytelling that feels like really authentic. And I think it's again using that storytelling and then making sure that that content is in the right places at the right time.
Mm-hmm. so many shoppers are kind of having a greater desire to shop small off the back of kind of wanting to have this desire to, be more sustainable. How have you seen attitudes among students change in what they care about?
We've seen it change in terms of the values. I think they've, even when you think about diversity, inclusion, all of, they're redefining what that means, and they want, they're looking for, it's not about brands, they want brands that they connect with that really do something in those areas, right? It's not just around sending a tweet or an ad, that like they want to know that these are topics that are really important to the brand, right? And I think we're seeing more and more of that. This is, it's been referred to as the, Gen Z is like, they're driving a revolution, right? They're so involved in politics, they're so involved in the environment, they're so involved in diversity and inclusion, and it's great, right? And these are the areas where brands also have to make sure that they're taking notice of, and doing not just for the sake of driving sales, but they're bringing that culture internally, right? Because that's what's going to transcend, and Gen Z will take notice.
They're so much more savvy a consumer group than I ever was. Like when I was that age, now I didn't ever think, like when I was a student, like I didn't think about any kind of sustainability. I wasn't interested in like politics. I didn't feel completely loyal to brands at all.
No. And you bought what made you look nice, right?
Yeah,
you wanted to look stylish, you wanted to look nice, so you bought the products that made you feel good. That's it. Yeah.
They're so much more invested now. It's like crazy.
I think their definition of what makes you feel good has evolved, right? Yeah. So they still buy brands that make them feel good, but feeling good is much more than physical to them, right? So it's around like the values, the materials the brand is using, what the brand stands for, and so on. So I think their definition, I think the end result is somewhat the same. You buy things that make you feel good, and if you're having a bad day, you put on something that your favorite jumper or so on, or lipstick, and it transforms you, right? It just makes you feel better. But I think their definition of what feels good is very different to previous generations.
And trust comes into it so much as well. And how do you, as Unidays, kind of gain trust within that consumer group between students and Gen Z, that actually you're a trustworthy brand, as it were, to shop via, and that you can offer them content that they don't necessarily get elsewhere?
Yeah, good question. I think so trust comes from working with having the brands on the platform that we know they care about. There's some brands that we'll turn away if we think they're not right. It happens. We make sure that the content and our messaging is in line with what's important to them. Also, we're a very robust platform, and we're a very secure platform. So, we make sure that, our students are 100% verified. We're not spamming them, as, we're quite careful in terms of the comms, how often, and also very targeted. So we use our technology to send very targeted, hyper-relevant, personalized messages, so that, and if you're doing that consistently, then that builds that trust, right? We're not going to send, if you're on the platform and you've only engaged with fashion brands, we're not going to start sending you emails about technology, right? Really focus on what the member wants and try and create a personalized approach. And I think over time, that's what builds the trust.
And so as kind of like, as a brand, like you kind of interact with the audience in order to keep them engaged, how does the team at Unidays work together with those brands to ensure that the content and the messaging that they're offering is kind of gaining that peak traction?
Yeah, it's all a team effort, really. We've got a fantastic, creative marketing growth team, production team. It starts with making sure that we've got a clear brief from the brand. What is it they want to achieve? What's important to them? What don't they want to see from this? What does success look like to them? The content team and our creative studio will take that brief, and they then will create content that's suitable. One of the things we ask the brands is to trust us when we're creating content, and like we know what works for our audience, so to trust our team in terms of, you know, how to create it, what to create, which influencers to work with. And in most part, it works really well. You know, we work hand in hand with the brand, and they really give us the space to communicate with the audience in our tone of voice. And that's really, really important to us when we're creating content on behalf of the brand, that is still in the Unidays tone of voice, and it's not, you know, the brand. It's you know, it's. I'll give you an example. We did a great partnership with Converse earlier this year, which was around Pride Day. So we asked members of the LGBT community to design a shoe that represents kindness to them. Again, you know, everything from the font, the look and feel, the design was very Unidays, but weaving in the Converse messaging, right? And so we always try to think about, like, how's our audience going to react to it? I'm a huge believer from my MTV days to now. If you create work that is going to resonate with your customer, then that's going to benefit the business overall afterwards, right? So I really start with our customer first, and then we focus on, you know, creating the right solution.
Gen Z is so engaged with kind of influencer marketing now, and that, you know, it's people who they go to really trust they trust their opinion to recommend products. And, you know, the social media revelation has been a complete boom in that, with a key focus on authenticity, because, you know, those followers and that audience, they really do trust that opinion of those influencers. How do influencers really build that trust within the Gen Z consumer group that brands can then kind of take advantage of?
Yeah, I think it takes time, and you mentioned a few times, it's like the authenticity, right? You know, the influencers have to start building their following with content that they're really passionate about, and that passion will come through. And as they build that following and their engagement rates, so we look at influencers not just with the high following, but we look at their engagement rate, which is really important. And if they're creating content that feels true to them, that is really about passion areas, then their engagement rate, and then consistency, right? You need to have like a regular cadence of content. And then it's about partnering with the right brands. You know, you see some partnerships that just feel like, why is that influencer working with this partner, right? So it's then finding the brands that align with your values, that also you're passionate about, because then it becomes much more natural when you're promoting or working on behalf of the brand.
You touched earlier a little bit upon gamification, and so many more students now are really engaged in gaming, and brands are kind of getting on board with that as well. And it's such a huge topic of conversation. And shoppers are really kind of buying into like the limited editions, like the exclusive products. How has that become like such a successful marketing strategy for a lot of brands?
Yeah, God, I wish I knew. It's an area that I want to learn so much more about, as you say, because there's more and more brands that are getting involved. But from the reports that I've seen is that Gen Z gamers really like to play online because they can be their real selves without judgment. That sometimes, in contrast, you get that judgment from Instagram and more visual-based social media. So the gaming platforms are starting to fill that gap where, again, it could be more of themselves without feeling like they need to expose what they look like. And then, you know, I think brands have been so clever at creating like virtual clothing inside games, and they not only drive awareness, but they also drive sales results. Adidas, Champion, Nike are all great examples of how they've done that. I was reading that Louis Vuitton and Prada have done their unique, integrations within some of the games as well. So it's also becoming from more luxury brands. So that's really interesting. So I think there's more to come in terms of trends. I think gaming is definitely an area to watch out for. And you see it. I've read that you see it a lot more in emerging economies. So like in LATAM and Asia Pacific, you're seeing a real gaming boom there, and brands integrate within the games there.
How do you see kind of Gen Z and student consumer groups changing their shopping habits to buy into designer goods? Because the common misconception is that they don't buy into them at all. But what do you think of that? Are they buying into designer?
Yes, yeah, they do. I mean, one of our, we work with Farfetch on the platform, and it's amazing what they buy on Farfetch, right? They do spend. They have, students have a high disposable income, and here they're supported with the loan drops throughout the year in the UK. But I think, they definitely like to invest in luxury brands. They'll probably invest in less items, but more high quality items. But I think it's totally like fake news when they talk about not investing in luxury. When you look at our average order value on Farfetch is over £300, so it's quite high.
Do you think that, because Unidays, obviously a lot of people know Unidays for being a platform which provides discounts and helps students shop, what else do you kind of offer them that isn't just about shopping? Because there's so many other kind of like elements to being a student that is more than just their disposable income. It's their mental health, it's their kind of building new relationships, being in a new place. Like, what else is available to them on the Unidays platform?
Yeah, one of the areas that we've been really passionate about, especially in the last 2 years where students have had a difficult time, is giving them opportunities. So we've worked and I look at it, and then I collaborate with brands on it. So we did like the Student Women of the Year Awards, which was about highlighting female identifying students that have contributed to their community. And we took it global this year. We partnered with Albright, which is a digital female career network. And we had some amazing, inspiring stories from all around the world. And so that was a really important piece of work around highlighting what's, the work that some students are doing. We recently launched something called Studio X, which we looked for like 10 amazing creative talents, and they've actually been creating our digital acquisition campaign for freshers. So they did the creative. So we think, when you think about a student, like what else is important to them? Career and upskilling them. So we've actually, through our grad life proposition, we're now starting to look at how do we upskill and support students. So there's an area called My Extras, which is not about retail, which is around career-based advice, which has mental health partners, which has health partners like fitness and all of that. So we're looking at those adjacent areas and what they mean for students and how can we support them in those areas. It's really exciting product development from a Unidays perspective.
Do you try to maintain a relationship with students once they leave and finish being a student? Because they still must have like quite a loyal kind of feeling towards Unidays and indeed their life as a student. Do you feel like it's important to go on a bit of a journey with your consumers?
Yeah, so when they graduate from Unidays, they now go on to grad life for 3 years. And so through that, we continue that journey with them. But there are they've evolved, right? So that's where we've created these new services and these new ways of communicating with them you still get the discounts exclusively from our brands, but you also have access to career opportunities, employment advice, other areas that become important to them.
So tell me, what are your predictions for the future of student shopping trends?
God, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I can give you kind of a feel of what I think will happen. I think we'll continue to see, online dominate. I think that's not going to change. What I'd like to see more of is trends like live streaming and social commerce. Like that's huge in like China at the moment and exploded during the pandemic. Which it has not picked up in the same way in Europe or the US. So I think that's going to become more important going forward, a huge opportunity to drive sales via live stream. And that's your kind of your evolution of the content that's created now. I think gaming will become increasingly more important. But I think the one thing that will remain the same and won't change is the importance of brands connecting with this audience early on, right? For the brands that don't, I think, it's about their future, right? If you want to, really think about, bulletproofing your future, you need to be investing in this audience and you need to be on the platforms that they're on.
100%. Well, it's
Mm.
been so lovely to talk to you. Like, I feel like you've got some such incredible insights, which are just so valuable to, whether you're a student or you're a brand watching this, like it's incredible. So I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was great. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Thanks so much. And I hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, bye.